Well, I think it was Winston Churchill that said, those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. That's the lesson I hope the Buffalo Bills will learn from the game versus the Minnesota Vikings. How many lessons can you learn from that game? What a football game. I'm just glad I was able to sit in the end zone to be able to watch that. It was a memorable one for sure. And you know what? I hope that that's a future Super Bowl, because hopefully one of those teams is finally going to win a Super Bowl. They're both very good teams. And more about what we do on this channel. Talk about the Buffalo Bills. Vikings are a good team, but this is about the Bills. So it was a wild game. You can't blame the refs. I know after a lot of games, Bills fans like to blame the referees, but how can you blame the refs when, in my opinion, Gabe Davis dropped the football and they called it a catch? The Bills were smart enough to get the snap off quickly before New York could call in the last 2 minutes to get it reviewed. And in overtime, the Bills had 12 players on the field on one play, and that was allowed. So you can't blame the referees on this one, but there are a few things to blame. Hate to blame anyone individually, because what it's really about is, figuring out how to make things better in the future, because you can't take that game back, but we've got Cleveland coming into town, and we need to win that one. So here's a few things I thought they needed to think about. First half, running the ball, short passes. Thought maybe it was short passes because of Josh's elbow. They might have wanted to stress the short pass and the run game. It worked. Last week's video, I said they needed to stop so many long passes and Josh needs to start taking the checkdowns. That's what he was doing in the first half. And then in the second half, they went back to the longer passes, did away with the running game. I don't know why. It worked in the first half. Go away from it in the second half. That's one thing I think our coaching staff looks to look right in the mirror and think about that to fix for our upcoming games. One thing Bills fans need to remember is the game is not over until it's over. I was yelling that to fans after the Bills stopped the Vikings in the fourth quarter at the quarter-yard line. The quarter-yard line, and the Bills defense made a stop. All the fans were proclaiming it a victory, that I was around anyway in my seats. And I told them all, it's not over. They've got to get the ball out of the end zone, and it's hard. It's hard to get the ball out of the quarter-yard line. That being said, the Bills tipped their hat on that play. Under center, when they send Gabe Davis in motion, it's easy for the defense to know when the snap is coming. They can jump the snap because they're waiting for Gabe to just get behind Josh, to do the push behind Josh. Harrison Phillips obviously watched a lot of film before coming to this game. He wanted to win this game, coming back against his opposing team, and I was happy to see Harrison before the game. He is a nice guy, and he's done a lot for the Buffalo community, and now he's doing a lot for the Minnesota community. So he's a really good guy. Former Player of the Year, Walter Payton Player of the Year for us a couple of times. So, but Harrison jumped that snap. He was moving before the ball got into Josh's hands because he knew when Gabe Davis got behind him, that's when the snap was coming. So he's moving, and the snap hasn't even gotten finished yet, and it caused a problem, I believe. I think Harrison Phillips was the star of the game. That fumble, when the game could have been in hand if all they can do is get out of the end zone, and then they score a touchdown on it. So that's one thing. They've got to come up with a new plan. I liked the tush push with Gabe Davis, but now it's on film. Teams have seen it, and you're actually letting the team know when the snap is coming, and you can't have that. Take the field goal. I think it was 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. You got to take the field goal there. Get us up by 13 points. There's too many things in the NFL that can happen over the course of a game. I think it had most of the fourth quarter still to play. And, you got to get the points whenever you can. Maybe if it's 4th and 1, I'm okay with going for it. But it was farther out than that. And those 3 points turned out to be huge in a game that obviously was tied and went into overtime. That being said, I think the Vikings went for it on a 4th down too, that they could have kicked the field goal. So, 6 to 1, half dozen the other there. Knock the ball down is the next thing. This is where you really have to learn from Buffalo Bills history. Going back a couple of years in the Cardinals game when they threw the Hail Mary pass and beat us, Hail Murray pass and beat us to win the game. Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer both said after that game, they will never make that mistake again. They're going to knock down every pass. And later on, in the same season, there was a Hail Mary attempt by another team. And before the play, they both looked over at each other and said, make sure you knock it down. Now, in my time in semi-pro football, our coach, Alex Ross, always made sure that the DBs, the defensive backs, knew what was going on before each play, that they knew the game situation. And on 4th and, 29? Come on. You got to know, knock the ball down. And I'm hoping the coaches and even Micah, who was on the sidelines, and Jordan, who was on the sideline, were telling the defensive backs to knock the pass down before the play. Because if you're not, the natural instinct when that play comes, if you haven't thought about it beforehand, is to try to catch it. You think the ball's overthrown, and Cam Lewis, who's the 3rd string safety, who had to come in for Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde out, and then after Wade Jaquan Johnson played last week, taking those bad angles, they put in Cam Lewis. I thought Cam played good the whole game. He played really well. But on that play, you got to knock the ball down. And Cam knew it afterwards. You could see how disgusted he was and how depressed it made him feel, that he knew he made a mistake on that play, and it could have won the game if he just knocks that ball down. Instead, the way he tried to intercept it actually helped Jefferson, who's an obviously amazing football player, catch the ball. Instead of knocking it down, would have taken it away. I think his interception actually helped him hold on to that with his one hand. So knock the ball down. That's something we've got to learn in the future. Learn the game situation. Just learn the game situation. So, and that's part of the next topic, the red zone. Okay, in the first half, first of all, you're playing against a Minnesota Vikings team who is the worst in the NFL in the red zone. The worst. And we ran it in twice with Singletary. Twice. And then they get to 2 yards out and they try to throw it 4 times. Give the ball to Singletary and see if he can run it in again. He already did it twice. Passing in the red zone is very hard. You got to know the game situation. Everything gets tighter. Everything's closer because obviously the defensive backs and the safeties and the linebackers don't have to spread out as much because there's not as much yardage to cover. And the passing game needs to be altered in the red zone because Josh Allen now, I believe, leads the league in interceptions, and most of them are happening in the red zone where he's trying to force it into a tight window. And that happened, I believe, in the overtime. There was a small window open to get that ball to Gabe Davis on the touchdown pass. And he could have hit it for a second, but he threw it a little bit late and a little bit behind him, and it was intercepted. Again, that's because it's so tight in those areas. Down at the other 20, he completes that pass. In the end zone, or probably does, in the end zone, it's too tight. And he had Singletary open for a check down. And he should have dumped it to Singletary. We still had time. I think it was 2nd down. In the play before, I actually thought Dawson Knox was pass interference on the Vikings defense, and we should have the ball at the 1 yard line. But, I'm not going to blame the referees because obviously, like I already said, they made some mistakes in the Bills' favor during the game. And but anyway, Josh is pushing it too much in the red zone. I think a lot of his interceptions are happening in the red zone. He's pushing it. It's too tight. And we need to run the ball more. We needed to run it the way we did it in the first half. I never saw Devin Singletary make as many jukes on one run as he did in the red zone against the Vikings. And he was just juking every single player. I think he juked 4 guys on one play. And that's what we need. We need to run the ball more. The Bills need to run the ball more. And they need to take the short stuff. And Josh needs to just take the check down if the window's small. If the player's wide open, obviously throw him the ball, win the game. But that's a tight window. You were trying to get that ball in. You threw it a little late and behind him, and game over. Then he chucked his helmet. He was obviously angry because he, you know, if our quarterback's not angry after doing that, he probably shouldn't be your quarterback because he should be angry at himself. So what do we do now? What do the Bills do now? You know what you do? You learn from all those things so that you're not doomed to repeat it. Every single player on the Bills team, heck, every fan, every coach downstairs, every coach upstairs, every general manager, every person that works in the front office, look in the mirror. It's time to circle the wagons. It's time to be the team that everyone thought you were before the season, not the team that you've lost 2 games, the last 2 games out. There's too much talent on the Buffalo Bills. So we learn all those things. We circle the wagons, become tighter, and move on to Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns are coming into town next week. We need to turn it around, and Cleveland seems like a good team to be able to turn it around on. They just got trounced by the Miami Dolphins. They got a backup quarterback playing. He's playing well, but it's not their starter. You've got to beat Cleveland, then you got to go into Detroit against Thanksgiving. But first and foremost, you got to beat Cleveland. Don't take anything down the road at all. You shouldn't have said that about Detroit. Beat Cleveland. Worry about Cleveland right now and start getting Josh to take the check down, the short pass when it's a small window deep, and run the ball more. People complain about the Bills not having a good running game stat-wise because you're not trying. You get stopped on a 1-yard gain and you give up on the play for the rest of the game. Especially in the run zone, we got to figure out how to run the ball in the red zone. You started 4 running backs this last game. 5, actually, if you count Tywan Jones. Let's run the ball. We got the guys that can do it. And I believe in our offensive line. If our offensive line's the problem, I don't know how to fix it because all of them, I think that all of them are really good. Spencer Brown had a couple of holding penalties this last game. Those are going to happen. They're going to happen. Anyway, let's go Bills. Stay positive. And remember, God loves you, and so do I!